All right, welcome to Sports on the Couch. I'm Elijah Campbell with my partner in crime, Brody Whitaker, and today we're going to cover March Madness, the best, craziest, and most unpredictable 3 to 4 weeks in sports. Baseball season's coming around. We'll give our predictions of the season, who had the best offseason and who had the worst offseason. The biggest fight in over 20 years is coming up on May 2nd, so why the hell not talk about it now? Welcome to Sports on the Couch. Starting off in March. It's March. What goes on in March? Usually March Madness.
Greatest time of the year.
The best time of the year. The best 3 weeks of the season is nonstop action. The most unpredictable 3 weeks in basketball as well. And
March Madness Thursday is like Christmas morning.
It's like Christmas morning, and except for one day, it lasts for 3 weeks. And we've had upsets. Personally, everybody does their bracket. Everyone goes nuts with bracket talk. Some people fill out 69 brackets, and some people, like myself, I feel like it's just necessary to do one. I don't feel like I should put 4 or 5. I like sticking to my gut and having my own opinion. And mine personally, I'm going to admit, I was a sucker for Iowa State. I had them in my Final Four, and they won the Big 12. They won the Big 12 tournament, which is what was believed to be one of the tougher conferences in college basketball. You have your Kansas, your Iowa State, Oklahoma. Oklahoma State was good this year. West Virginia has been the best they've been in years under Bob Huggins. So to me, with a team that scores as many points as they did, averaging around 80 points a game in an era of low-scoring college basketball, I felt no need not to see Iowa State, running the table and making a deep run.
And then getting upset by 14 Northeastern. I think that just really messed up a lot of people's
UAB,
brackets.
yeah. And Iowa State came in and they ended up getting upset by UAB. And that was the first game of the day. That was the first game of the day.
I guess it's a good thing they didn't scrap UAB's basketball program along with their
exactly.
football program.
They cut the football program, which I thought was ridiculous in the first place. But that's the beauty of it. It's unpredictable. And the ESPN Bracket Challenge, out of the millions and millions of people,
I think it was 11.5 million brackets.
11.5, yeah, 11.5 million brackets that were made. Only one, by the time yesterday rolled around, was considered perfect.
And that was all shot when
Ohio State beat Arizona. Yeah. See, no one can predict this. Warren Buffett last year had if you could make a perfect bracket, I'll give you, it was like $1 million.
$1 billion.
$1 billion with a B. Billion with a B. And no one got past the first round without getting it perfect because, I guess, like we just said, it's the most unpredictable.
They say that the odds are better to have like a third-person view of the Earth out of all the people that have ever lived on the Earth and pick out one person, and that person being one of the 7 people that has ever walked on the moon.
That is insane.
That you have better chances of doing that than filling out a perfect March Madness bracket.
Like I said, there's 68 teams, and you have to predict every game
from the first round.
From the first round on. And there's 6 rounds, 7 if you're some teams, if you're in what they call the first 4, which I only consider play-in games. I hate how they call it the first round. I don't think you can only put
second round.
8 teams.
The new second round.
Exactly.
The round of 64 should be the first round.
Should be considered. It was considered the first round for about 20, 30 years. It's only been recently they bring in these first 4. Of course, it used to be just 16 seeds. 2 16 seeds played. The best number 1 seed in the tournament. Now you have 4 16 seeds playing for the right to play a 1 seed, which I get. These small schools don't have a chance to schedule large schools and have a chance to beat them in the regular season, nor in the tournament. Let's face it, we'll never get a Hampton beating a Kentucky. We'll never get a Robert Morris beating a Duke. Coastal Carolina never had a chance of beating Wisconsin.
We'll get a Robert Morris beating Kentucky, though.
We'll get a Robert Morris beating Kentucky in the NIT.
In the NIT.
But in the NCAA tournament, when it matters most, it's just never going to happen.
The 16 one is just never going to happen.
Like, these 1 seeds now,
the talent difference is
off the charts. I don't care how good.
The spread is too different.
Exactly.
The 12-5s, you get like the best mid-major school being a 12, and then like the so-so SEC, ACC school.
Exactly.
And then that mid-major team usually has that star that nobody's ever heard of, like the Steph Curry at Davidson, the C.J. McCollum at Lehigh,
And that's where a lot of these guys, the R.J. Hunter this year. R.J. Hunter is this year's Stephen Curry. He is this year's C.J. McCollum. And he was a 14 seed at Georgia State. And these teams like Georgia State have major Division I talent. R.J. Hunter is a round one.
They just slip under the radar.
NBA prospect.
And his dad's the coach, right?
And his dad's the coach. If his dad's not the coach at Georgia State, who knows where this guy could be? He could be at Baylor.
Incredible talent.
Incredible talent. He is projected to be a late first-round NBA draft prospect, and he's chilling at Georgia State.
And hitting 30-foot go-ahead game winners.
Yeah, to beat Baylor. Who a lot
of people had going to at least the Elite Eight.
At least,
maybe the Final Four.
Exactly.
Baylor's a great basketball team.
I had Baylor going Sweet 16.
I actually made a bracket solely based off of which mascot would win in a fight, and guess my championship game. Baylor, Iowa State.
Baylor, Cyclones and Bears.
I just thought it was fair to say that a Cyclone would pretty much beat anything in a fight.
It's a natural disaster.
It is. It's a natural
It'd be like
disaster.
if the University of Miami was in the NCAA tournament.
The Hurricanes.
Good luck beating a hurricane.
Good luck. If it can wipe out the Eastern Seaboard, it could pretty much
wipe out
any mascot.
It could wipe out your Panthers or your Wildcats pretty easily. Definitely. Or Tulane, the Green Wave.
I don't know where I'd go. Hurricane versus Green
Wave.
That's a toss-up.
That's one of those where you're flipping coins or
kind of like the Mayweather Pacquiao.
The Mayweather Pacquiao fight. Exactly.
Nobody really knows.
Nobody knows.
Maybe I don't know. I think the age on Pacquiao might.
This is the most anticipated fight in the last 15 to 20 years. We used to base sports off of the best championship boxing matches. Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield.
In many people's opinion, Muhammad Ali is the greatest athlete to ever live.
Exactly.
Boxer,
And the Ali-Frazier fight was one of the biggest sports events in the 20th century. And down goes Frazier will always be remembered as one of the greatest calls in the history of sports and sports media. The Buster Douglas upset of Mike Tyson. Also a monumental sporting event in the 1990s. And we haven't really had that in the 2000s.
Sonny Liston's upset over...
Sonny Liston. And in the early 2000s, of course, Mike Tyson was ending his career, and Floyd Mayweather and Roy Jones Jr. We're all in the prime of their careers. But we never got those big-time fights, And Pacquiao has been good for years. Both these guys are 40 or touching 40.
Pacquiao's
these guys
36,
are not.
I think.
I want to say, can we get a fact check on that? Mayweather and Pacquiao's age?
But I think this would have been a perfect fight to happen probably
5 years ago. Exactly. America has wanted.
The world.
The world has wanted this fight for years. And either at first it was Mayweather's camp wanted to do Olympic-style drug testing, or Pacquiao didn't want to do it. His camp didn't do it. Vice versa. Either way, they couldn't get a settlement on just petty stuff like how they did the drug testing and TV deals. And of course, for years, you had Skip Bayless.
Pacquiao's 36.
And for a boxer, that's like 50.
Yeah.
A lot of brain damage. A lot of blows.
You said something like he's fought in 406 rounds.
That's insane. That takes a toll on your body.
That does. Like, regardless if you're a quintessential premier athlete, regardless of how in shape, how well trained you are,
38.
406 rounds will take a
It'll
toll
take
on
a toll on your body.
Regardless of,
the human body's not built to last that long.
Especially professional boxing blows, like.
Exactly.
It's not like he's not getting hit anytime he's in the ring.
He's going to get hit.
He's going to wear some punches. You're not going to.
And at the age of 38 and 36, these guys aren't what they used to be.
No, if we could backtrack to early 30s, late 20s.
Exactly. If we could fight this fight in 2010, this is one of the greatest boxing matches.
Potentially the greatest boxing match
potentially of all time.
Most anticipated for sure.
And that would have been before Pacquiao would have had his losses. He had a couple losses to Bradley. We had one loss to Bradley. One, I think, went the distance. And Pacquiao won a decision, which was quite controversial. And, of course, Mayweather's never been beat. And he's beaten anyone that he could except Pacquiao. And you have guys like Skip Bayless calling Mayweather scared and soft. And I don't know if it's that he was scared or just that he's like, these guys are 38 and 36 years old. Exactly. Like, they're near the end of their careers. It's hard.
Potentially, this could potentially be the last fight for both of them.
The last fight for both of them.
Like,
exactly.
Why not end on this note, you know?
Exactly. And this fight needed to happen. If they wanted boxing to last after 2015, this fight needed
Boxing is a dying breath,
happen.
and this might be the saving grace of the sport.
This could be it.
This might definitely be it.
This is the last, what looks like could be the last gasp. Because after Mayweather and Pacquiao, who else is a big name in boxing? It's not. UFC
is slowly taking over the boxing world.
It's taken over, yeah. And boxing is a dying sport. And I think we realized that after the Mayweather-De La Hoya fight, that we thought that was going to be a mega fight. But you had a young-ish Mayweather who was about 30, still like in his prime. And then you had a retiring Oscar De La Hoya. And that match just, I didn't think, stood out.
It's the classic tale of
the young
teacher-student.
Teacher-student. And
it's the LeBron Kobe.
The LeBron Kobe, exactly. Yeah. One person gets older, and they're exiting the sport, and you're not obviously going to be who you were 8 years ago.
Never. Mm-mm. Regardless of how good you were 8 years ago, you can never go back to that.
Regardless. If you had to pick right now, Pacquiao, Mayweather, on gut feeling alone, who you got?
Gut feeling, I want to say Pacquiao, but I just think Mayweather's too good. I just think I think he is boxing now. He's made boxing what it is, and I just think he's going to be too much for Pacquiao to handle for the entire distance anyway. And
Pacquiao has lost a lot of fights to fighters that are not as good as him. Now, I don't think Mayweather's probably fought anyone as fast as Pacquiao, but no one's been able to hit Mayweather for years. And Mayweather he just doesn't get touched. He'll go round after round after round and not get touched. And that's going to be, I think, the X factor. Now, personally,
Mayweather's got a lot of confidence.
He's got a lot of confidence, exactly.
He's really cocky in his ability and his
he knows what he can do.
I mean, the guy carries $1 million around with him in a duffel bag everywhere he goes.
Yeah, exactly. Because he can.
Because he has it.
He's accumulated so much money.
Exactly.
He doesn't know what to do with all that. I wouldn't know what to do with that.
He's the number one boxer in the world. Pacquiao's the number 2 boxer in the world. It's the quintessential fight that we've been waiting for.
Exactly. It's the fight we've been waiting
since
for
Ali
years.
Frazier.
And it's 5 years overdue. If these guys were 5 years ago when they're both closer to their prime, we would get a better fight. But I'm not sure what we're going to get on May 2nd. But I don't think what May 2nd 2015 would be compared to what May 2nd 2010 would have been. Going back to March Madness, a lot of people picked Iowa State. Brackets were busted.
A lot of people picked Iowa State.
When Baylor got beat by Georgia State.
That first day of games, though, man.
The first day of games was incredible.
5 games decided by 1 point. First time that's ever happened.
Exactly. It was the most exciting time because you get these close games. All these teams in college basketball are so close. All these athletes are stars.
See, I think
and we see them better because of YouTube, because of Scout Inc. Or
the marketing is just Twitter, social media, everything just blows up. Marketing.
Access to better athletes is possible, and you can find athletes in the small parts of America.
It's like in the NBA now, like the big markets aren't as big anymore because the small markets can get just as much as exposure. Like the LAs and the New Yorks aren't LA and New York anymore because Milwaukee can get just as much Twitter marketing as the Lakers can.
Can, exactly. And 40 years ago, that's not the case. 40 years ago, the Wichita States...
whatever's in the paper.
You're getting whatever's in the paper.
What's in the paper.
The Wichita States, the Gonzagas, they don't have access to star athletes. Now, even to this day, Kentucky gets all the star recruits. Duke will get all the top 10s. You'll get guys like Arizona gets a lot of these 5-star recruits. But these 3 stars that come from places like, I don't know, like Tennessee, or South Carolina or these smaller states that usually don't produce 5-star talent but can produce 3-star talent,
now have
just as good. Now have the opportunity to be
to
seen.
go out and get more talent and be seen, and exactly.
Gonzaga has made a living. Mark Few at Gonzaga has done the best job of anyone in the country at getting guys from overseas or guys who are overlooked in high school. And I think you benefit more from that in this age, which is what makes the talent level go up in college basketball. It's what levels the playing field.
I also think though that the downfall of college basketball, not really the downfall, but like a negative is the one and done. I think it's kind of almost ruining college basketball a little bit because you see a lot of teams that have like one superstar player, but then they just have a bunch of freshmen because everybody's one and gone. Which would prolong their NBA career. So that's good.
And I personally...
But you just don't get the 4-year team chemistry development that you could.
You don't get what we get in Wisconsin.
Exactly.
However, this year's Kentucky team has made a point to go 36-0 with a team full of freshmen and sophomores, but they've kept some juniors as well.
They have.
Cauley Stein has stayed an extra 2 years, and that's helped him immensely in terms of athletic ability and playing experience. The game... You can tell from his freshman year when they made the NIT.
Just went from a raw talent to
the game coming more natural to him,
and almost him. They try to play through him a little bit. Almost.
And they can play through him a little bit. Their fast break offense is throwing the ball up there and hoping Willie Cauley-Stein catches it and throws it down on somebody.
That's his offense. I mean, that's his style of play.
And that's how they do it. And if you Arkansas found out the hard way in 2 games, if you try to run with this Kentucky team, you're going to lose.
He's got a lot of what Blake Griffin had at Oklahoma.
Right.
Just raw athleticism and power.
Raw athletic ability. And I see a lot of DeAndre Jordan.
I've made the
DeAndre Jordan comparison.
For sure.
But what made DeAndre Jordan good was years of development. Staying at Texas A&M for multiple years. Willie Cauley-Stein has developed his game by staying more than 1 year. He stayed 3. At Kentucky, being a sophomore made you almost like a senior.
Unheard of.
And like the Harrison twins seem like seasoned veterans, and they're only sophomores. This is only their second year here, but they have Final Four experience.
Exactly. So you think they can do it? 40-0?
I have said it since the beginning of the year, and I've said it for many years. That
it hasn't happened in 39 years.
76.
Yep.
I think it is impossible in today's modern college basketball to go undefeated. But... Big but, capital B-U-T.
If anyone was going to do
was going to do it, this team looks like they can because it's built off defense. Their weakness is their offense. They're not going to just outscore people, but they will keep you from scoring. Cincinnati played the game of their season yesterday and only scored 51 points.
But they didn't capitalize off a lot of second chance points. They had a lot of offensive rebounds that just didn't turn into points, and you can't win games like that.
You can't win games like that.
Didn't make their free throws. Can't win games without free throws,
Mm-mm. You really can't.
But if you put a Virginia or Wisconsin that's not going to miss those shots, then what's the outcome of yesterday's game,
And that's where I think Wisconsin wins it, because Wisconsin has 4-year seniors. They have the Sam Deckers, the Frank Kaminsky's, and they have the Travion Jacksons. Those guys have been there for 4 years. I think
Kaminsky's really just going to be a test to Kentucky's front court if they do get to if
we
do get that matchup. He does.
What made Georgia dangerous?
They space the floor well too, and
exactly. When you watch Kentucky play at Georgia, Jurisic, the center for Georgia, could stretch the floor out. He could stretch his game beyond 15 feet. And when you pull Towns and Cauley-Stein, the 7-foot monsters, away from the basket, and you put only one there instead of 2, the shot blocking numbers are going to go down, and your chances of just getting a shot up will increase.
The interior defense for that Kentucky team is
unreal.
Overpowering, just because they have 2 near 7-footers that are both All-Americans and can both play extreme defense. Yeah, so if you pull away one of them, you space the floor a little bit, get backdoor cuts.
This is the best defensive front court we will ever see in college basketball.
You think so?
I think so, because they cycle out 7-footers. They have 4 7-footers. They have 2
on
the bench to their disposal.
Their bench could start at a lot of major college programs.
Yeah, Marcus Lee could start anywhere he wanted to. Dakari Johnson could start anywhere he
Devin
wanted
Booker,
to.
I think, probably could.
Devin Booker would start
great jump shooter
anywhere just because of his, his jump shooting ability. And I mean, just even their perimeter defenders. Ulis is a lockdown defender. He's not very big, which is Kentucky's. It's their go-to is their size, but Ulis will lock down on anyone, and the Harrison twins can play defense, and they're 6'6".
All their guards, lateral quickness too helps out a lot.
That are 6'6", and they have lateral quickness. And the fact that they have any kind of offensive game, like Cauley Stein, what makes him so valuable is the fact that he has any offensive games, the fact that he can dunk over people. It makes him 10 times more valuable to that team if they can score, along with keeping teams from scoring over 55 points. You score over 55 points against Kentucky, it's a moral victory. But that's where I think Wisconsin can come in and take down Kentucky because they can score against.
They can do the little things that Cincinnati just couldn't find yesterday.
Shooting inside, shooting free throws, keeping composure. Cincinnati. Octavius Ellis, who is known for losing his composure, lost it a couple times yesterday. And I think Kentucky really got into the heads of a lot of the Cincinnati players.
I think also Cincinnati really got in the head of Kentucky, though, because I think there was a minute when they kind of realized themselves, wow, we can get beat. We are just another basketball team, you know? Because there was a lot of pushing, shoving, jawing back and forth there in the end of the first half between Harrison and Ellis and stuff like that,
And the only difference was...
And if you take your team that thinks they're unbeatable and you can show them they can get beat, that's the best way to get in their heads.
It's the best way to get in their heads. The only difference was Kentucky's bench. They run 8, 9 deep.
They can run men off. They can run fresh legs on and off the floor all day.
Off the floor.
And nobody else in the country can do that.
5 minutes to go in the game. It's a 6-7 point game. It's stretched out to 14 by the end of the game because in the last 5 minutes, when 5 starters are worn out,
because they have McDonald's All-Americans sitting on their bench that are just fresh and can come in and put points on the board.
Booker can come off the bench, shoot threes, and Marcus Lee and Dakari Johnson can come in and keep up the defensive intensity, which is where a lot of teams fall off against anybody. It's hard to have 5 guys on the floor and on the bench with the same defensive intensity in the first half
throughout the entire game
as they would in the second half.
I mean, you run, your legs get tired, you're winded, you just don't play as good a defense.
Deep
but when
teams win titles.
When you're deep, especially in college basketball. Because a lot of teams don't just have that superstar talent that can take over and really drop 20 points in the last certain amount of time to come back and win the game, So the deepness just really helps.
Depth always.
It's not a word.
Depth always comes in as key, and that's what's won Kentucky games. That's what beat LSU. That's what beat Georgia. That's how they pull away from these games, is in crunch time, Kentucky's fresh and teams aren't. And that's where it's interesting. That's where I think Arizona can also match up with them because of their athleticism. They're deep and they're athletic. They can match Kentucky's athleticism. They can match their defensive intensity. Arizona can score the ball. But what I think makes Wisconsin a bigger threat is the way they shoot the ball. The way they can consistently shoot the ball.
They play extremely well together, too.
And they play extremely well together. Those guys have played together for years. Personally, I thought Villanova had a chance. But Nancy State did what March Madness is known to do. And that is
They called Cinderella and she came a-knocking,
She came coming, exactly. And
that's the best part.
Villanova, well, most people's brackets were in the finals, Final Four. And here you have now, it's halftime of the Virginia-Michigan State game. Michigan State is up by 5 points on Virginia. Personally, I had Virginia in my final against Wisconsin.
That's a wonderful pick. I mean, they're the best defensive team in the country.
Best defensive team in the country. They can lock down anybody.
They can run with anybody. They can easily lock down anybody.
They control the pace better than anyone, too. They make people play their game. They sucker people into sitting and waiting for that 35-second shot clock to go down to about 10 before they run an offense. And you have those 45 to 50 games. You have those 55-45 games. These games that don't get above 60 points because Virginia controls the tempo. They limit your possessions.
And make you take bad shots.
And make you take bad shots in lesser possessions, which keeps you from winning games.
They run the floor very well, too.
And they can run the floor very well. And I think Virginia could match up well with Kentucky if they could beat them in transition. That's where Duke beat Virginia, was in transition. That's where North Carolina beat Virginia, was beating them in transition. All these teams have flaws. And I've never thought there was an unbeatable team in college basketball. That will never happen just because these teams are so well coached, even though I do believe overcoaching is a tragic college basketball epidemic at times. But you have teams like the Wichita States, the Gonzagas, the Georgia States. They have players too. These guys can find athletes.
They can definitely find athletes. We saw that.
And we saw that with Georgia State. R.J. Hunter's made a name for himself in this NCAA tournament.
Or Craig Bradshaw from
Belmont.
Hit 4 threes in a row. And
Buckle guy from
dropped
CPA.
28.
Exactly. Against a good defensive Virginia team. No one looked at this guy in high school, but Belmont, so this guy's going to Belmont. Yet he hung 28 on the best defensive team in the country. These guys are all over the place. And I think we have more access to these players. Boise State has gone to the NCAA tournament for the first time, and a majority of their players are from Wyoming, Idaho. They get those
places
guys
that never would have produced college talent.
Yeah, that don't usually see college talent.
It's a different age, though.
It's not just guys from Texas, from Florida. Not the best high school athletes from the most exposed. You can find exposure, and small schools find their guys and make their teams. And that's what we saw with Georgia State. That's what we see with Wichita State. Greg Marshall's done an amazing job of turning Wichita State into a national contender. He took them undefeated every year. They went to the Final Four one year. The next year, he keeps most of those guys back. They go undefeated in the regular season. And they lose to a very underrated Kentucky team who lost in the final. That Kentucky team wasn't an 8 seed.
You don't think so?
They underseeded them so bad. I think Kentucky was a 4 or 5 that year. Yes, they lost some games that year, and they lost their South Carolinas. They lost their non-conference games, but they made a run in the SEC tournament, and a majority of their losses was to Florida, who was 34-2. Florida was
a shell of its former self this year.
Oh my goodness!
Billy Donovan usually puts together
this year's Florida team, last year's Florida team. That wasn't a Billy Donovan coach team. I really couldn't explain to you what the hell happened there, but what Kentucky did last year was not work of an 8 seed. That team had the talent of a 3 or a 4, and they underachieved. So Wichita State losing to them wasn't really a big deal.
No, it was made a big deal.
It was made a big deal. It was made to look like Wichita State didn't have the horses to compete with the big schools. And I think they proved that today when they square off against Kansas. Greg Marshall has won ever since he has been at Kansas.
Kansas is going to be a tough team
Wichita
to beat,
State.
though.
Ever since he's been at Wichita State, he has wanted to get this matchup with Kansas. And Bill Self has been the one, and it's been proven, he's the one who does not want this matchup. He has turned down Wichita State every year that they have tried to play. And personally, I don't know if it's that he's scared to play Wichita State, but we're going to find out today.
I guess we will.
If he is, because Greg Marshall's getting the opportunity he has wanted. These players for Wichita State,
his whole career.
Their whole careers.
Ever since they've been there.
They have been compared to Kansas in that state. Those are the two best teams in the state of Kansas, and that's Wichita State and Kansas. Never playing the regular season, and today is a chance to go to the Sweet 16. We're going to find out who wants it more and who just has the better team.
All right, so in your opinion, who's winning it all? Who's cutting the nets down?
I gotta go with Wisconsin.
You think so?
I think they're deep enough. They're experienced enough. Almost like what the San Antonio Spurs were last year, losing a heartbreaking Game 6 to the Miami Heat. Wisconsin lost arguably, as a team, one of the most gut-wrenching losses when Aaron Harrison hit that 3 under 3 seconds to go. That just took the life out of Wisconsin. Those losses you never forget. And I think Kaminsky, Decker, Gosser, all of those guys have been looking at the calendar for March to roll around, and they have wanted nothing more than to rematch a Kentucky team who took the life out of their amazing run last season.
They're gunning for them, for sure.
They're gunning for them. They've waited for this game, and Bo Ryan has been one of those coaches who's made overachievers out of non-athletic teams, out of average offenses, and almost like Virginia has played a slow pace, except for this year. They have been able to put up some points because Kaminsky, Decker, Goss are all major offensive threats, and they can all shoot the ball, and they can push it as well. They're more athletic than your normal Wisconsin team. So I believe that this year, with their experience and with a little more motivation to beat a Kentucky, and I think matchup-wise too, Kaminsky as the center will stretch the floor. He'll pull the Cauley Steins and the Karl Anthony Towns away from the rim, away from the basket.
His technicality with the ball and under the basket is just way better than Cauley Steins or Towns, in my opinion. He's just more experienced and just more finesse with the ball.
And I've always looked at him.
After yesterday, I think we saw that when Kentucky does get down and they start missing shots, it really takes a toll on them. Because yesterday, I mean, they got some iffy calls. They won some iffy 50-50 balls and stuff like that. But when they weren't hitting shots, you could tell in their face and like just their body language that their momentum was just gone. And Cincinnati capitalized on that in the first half, but just couldn't pull it together at the end. They didn't have the drive and didn't have it at the end.
And I think Wisconsin matches up better than anybody else would in terms of, like we said, pulling Towns and the Cauley Stein away from the basket. And they're not going to push.
Because if they don't, he's going to punish them like that.
He's going to punish them. He's going to swat those shots.
If they don't go out and close out on him, then
they're going to have to.
And if they do that, then they might leave the middle open, backdoor cuts all day, and
I think that if there's anyone that
pick and rolls will be good.
Shoot over. Kaminsky's a smart enough player. If he gets the ball in the post and he sees he's guarded by Towns, he sees Cauley Stein earing over that way, he's got guys to kick the ball out to. Gosser's a 3-point shooter. Decker's a 3-point shooter.
That's something Cincinnati didn't have.
Bronson Koenig is a 3-point shooter. If Travion Jackson can play, he is a knockdown 3-point shooter. All those guys can shoot. There are at least 4 shooting threats on the floor at all times. And Nigel Hayes, another center at Wisconsin, has got great size. He's a great defender. And his offensive ability has increased so much. Almost like Willie Cauley-Stein's. Now, not to the extent, but in terms of it helping Wisconsin, it's been to that magnitude. And I don't know. I really like Wisconsin's team. And the more I watch them, the more I love how they play, and the more I love how they would stack up against Kentucky. What Kentucky's done is still amazing. You can't ever take away from winning your first 36 games and going 36-0 in the modern basketball era. That's unreal.
But I think after this opening weekend, I think it's safe to say that college basketball is a sport where anybody could beat anybody on any given day.
Anybody.
On any given day.
Who do you have? Who's cutting on the nets in March to you?
I like Duke.
You like Duke? Okay.
I like Duke. I think Tyus Jones, Jahlil Okafor, just a really good 1-2. Justice Winslow at the 3. I think they're going to be tough to beat.
Winslow's one of those guys, too, that
explosive.
Explosive on a team with 5-star talent, 1 through 5, with the exception of Emil Jefferson. 1 through 5, they are just 5-star talent. And Justice Winslow gets overlooked a lot because Okafor gets the Naismith finalist. He gets the 18 and 11.
Arguably one of the best players in the country, though.
Exactly. You know? He's the top 3 best players in the country.
Going to be a top 3 draft pick next year.
It's going to be a top 3 draft pick. You know, there are teams out there tanking.
Just for the pure fact of saying we might get Jahlil
for the opportunity to get a Jahlil.
It was like the Wiggins and Parker last year.
Exactly. And you see these guys that can play in the NBA. However, I do believe Okafor's defense needs to strengthen, and he also needs to become a better than a 56% free throw shooter if he wants to separate himself from just the stereotypical big man in the NBA.
Exactly. We don't need another DeAndre Jordan, Andre Drummond.
Right, because they become liabilities in late games. And that's the only reason I have hesitated putting Duke past the Elite Eight is because in late games, Okafor can't hit free throws. Plumlee's not a great free throw shooter.
True.
Emil Jefferson's not a great free throw shooter. Winslow's a good free throw shooter. He's around 75%. But Tyus Jones and Quinn Cook usually don't miss. Better than the 90%. And Matt Jones is usually a pretty good three-point and free throw shooter as well. Duke's just got the best backcourt in basketball. Easily. I love watching Quinn Cook and Tyus Jones play.
They feed really well off of each other.
Exactly. You have the senior Quinn Cook. He's been there. Quinn Cook has lost 2 awful games, and he was a freshman when they lost to Lehigh, a 2 seed and a 15 seed, and he was a junior last year when they lost to Mercer as a 3 seed. He knows what it takes to lose these bad upset games.
And he knows the feeling, and I'm pretty sure he probably doesn't want to feel that again.
Yeah, exactly. I think when you saw Robert Morris cut the lead to 10 the other night, Duke was up 20. Robert Morris hits a couple threes. Jahlil Okafor missed that painfully looking backwards dunk in transition.
Hideous.
Okafor sits. Robert Morris hits a couple threes. Gets on a 10-0 run. Coach K calls a timeout.
Stroke of panic kind of came into some of those players because they've been there.
They've been there. And Quinn Cook comes out, knocks down a 3. He facilitates the ball. They run the fast break. They get fast break point after fast break point, and they keep scoring and scoring and scoring. And they pushed the 10-point lead to almost a 30-point lead. And I think it happened at that moment when Krzyzewski called the timeout, and Quinn Cook knew. He said, he's seen it before. It happened with Lehigh. It happened with Mercer. I think every Duke fan in the country was getting flashbacks of those games, and they start knocking down shots. And Duke, when they run the ball and they get in transition, they get open looks.
When they're on, they're hard to beat. They're
a dangerous 3-point shooting team.
Mm-hmm.
Quinn Cook can shoot the lights out.
But
Tyus Jones,
they live and die by it.
They can live and die by it.
Which is a downfall.
Exactly.
That's always a downfall.
Even with the inside presence of a Winslow and an Okafor, they do rely a lot on the
But when you match up with
shot.
the inside presence of Towns and
Cauley-Stein,
then you have to be able to shoot a 3.
You got to be able to shoot. And the 3-point shot is what would be... The 3-point defense is what the Achilles heel of the Kentucky defense is.
Because that spreads the floor and makes them pull out what they don't want to.
And that's a good Achilles heel to have because a 3-point shot from 25 feet away is obviously a lot harder than a 3-foot jump shot or layup or dunk because you don't get those against Kentucky.
Exactly.
You got to be able to knock down those deep 3s or deep 2s. You got to be able to knock down jump shots. You're not going to beat Kentucky on the inside. And even if Okafor gets shut down, Tyus Jones has got to be able to hit big shots. Quinn Cook's got to be able to hit big shots.
Especially late game down the stretch.
In late games, exactly.
They've got to have somebody that can
Winslow's
step up and hit the
game
winners, hit the game tires, all that stuff.
Winslow's got to be able to finish in transition amongst the trees of Cauley-Stein and Karl Anthony Towns.
Okafor's going to have a day if we get to see that matchup. I hope we do.
That would be a national championship matchup, and that would be the most anticipated college basketball final
in a
very long time. The ratings would go through the roof. I could only dream of something like that. And I kind of hope we get it. That would be an awesome matchup to see. And that'd be good for college basketball.
It'd be a good end to March Madness, I think.
It'd be a great end to the spectacle that is.
I don't even know if you could ruin this year's March Madness. This first weekend was just incredible.
Exactly. You know? And it's the unpredictability of it. Like I said at the beginning, everybody does a bracket. Everybody.
And then there comes a time after your bracket's busted where you're just, I don't care about my bracket.
I don't care about it anymore.
I love the Cinderella, you know?
You start cheering for the Georgia States.
Exactly.
And
like Florida Gulf Coast last year.
UABs. Florida
Nobody
Gulf Coast.
had them going that deep.
No, they're a 15 seed.
Everybody was cheering for them
by
the time they got
games.
there. Exactly.
They were in the Sweet 16. They're not in the top. They're barely in the top 16, teams in their own region.
Much less the NCAA tournament.
The whole NCAA.
Exactly.
And this year, you have the UCLA's who badly underachieved all year. That is a talented team, but they've lost their bad games, and they've lost bad conference games, and they really were lucky to be even considered to be in the tournament. They get a lucky goaltend call. That's by rule.
One of the most controversial calls, especially to end a game.
Yeah.
Very controversial.
Very controversial. By rule, goaltend, maybe. Do you call that? No. I just don't understand why you would call that in the final seconds of a game. That ball wasn't going in.
The rule states it as long as the ball has an opportunity to enter the basket, then it's a goaltend. Which I think everybody in the country knows that
ball wasn't going in. That ball was
not
going in.
Shoot that ball 100 times and it will miss 100.
Bryce Alford was looking at the other goal when he shot the ball, but that thing didn't have a chance to go in. So UCLA sneaks by that one. UAB beats Iowa State, which nobody in their right mind would have predicted if you would have watched any Iowa State basketball game throughout the season. That's been the biggest one to me. Baylor, I thought, was susceptible to a slip up. Iowa State, I thought, was almost, foolproof.
Iowa State had kind of a shaky game from their big man though.
Right, Niang didn't have a good game.
Did not have a good game, and they went to him in the final seconds, and I thought that was kind of questionable.
They have guys all across the floor that could score.
They did.
And the fact that UAB held them to 59 points says a lot to them and themselves, and that also says,
Iowa State's a good basketball team.
You can slip up at any moment. And Iowa State slipped up.
They slipped up about as hard as anybody could.
A team whose mantra is their offense. They only score 59 points.
Didn't break
in
60
an elimination
against the 14 seed in the NCAA tournament, the biggest stage in college basketball, and couldn't do what they do best.
And that's score points, and that's March.
That's the beauty of it.
UCLA gets UAB. UAB falls into UCLA's lap. This team that's underachieved all year has them fall into their lap, and they outplayed them yesterday. UCLA ran them out of the building. They outshot them. Rebounded them. UAB hit some threes towards the end, but that was the only reason that it was a 20-point game at least.
How many people in the country do you think had that matchup yesterday?
Oh, apparently there was only like one. There was one perfect bracket until about 6 o'clock Central Time yesterday, and
that game last night turned into a barn burner. I didn't think it would be.
There was a lot of those games. There was Arizona wore out Ohio State.
They did.
Another team that I think.
Well, another team I thought that would have went a lot deeper than that.
Ohio State is
they looked good.
Not a 10 seed.
Arguably have the best player in the country in D'Angelo Russell.
D'Angelo Russell is the most overlooked player in the country. This guy can score. He facilitates.
Does it all.
He does it all. He is averaging at least 21 points a game and at least 5 or 6 assists. Can we get a stat check on D'Angelo Russell?
Yes.
I mean, this is absurd. We're playing into 40-minute college basketball games with 35-second shot clocks in an era where the average college basketball team might score anywhere from 55 to 65 points a game.
What are you looking for?
Oh, perfect. Averaging 5 assists, round up to 6 rebounds, and 19 points a game.
Almost 20 a game. And
he's shooting 45% from the field, 41% from the three-point line. In today's college basketball, with the way defenses are, that's great, and he is.
That's top tier 3-point shooting for sure.
Exactly. Now, yesterday he laid an egg. He shot 3 for 19, 1 for 7 from the 3-point line.
But he had 6 assists in the first half.
Had 6 assists in the first half.
So even if he's not scoring, he finds people to score.
Second half, he finished with a goose egg in the assist department, but still, and he had 7 rebounds. This is one of those things. Arizona is athletic enough; they make you take bad shots. They're athletic enough on defense to make you take shots you don't want to take. And you make your best player, who's averaging close to 20 a game, score only 9. A guy who's shooting, 45% on the year, shoots 16. And against VCU, 50% from the field, shot 10 for 20, and dropped 28 points and 6 rebounds. And this guy, he'll be a top 10 NBA draft pick. Easily. And Ohio State also had 2 other guys. They had Shannon Scott, who has been there for years. Senior, very experienced. Mark Loving, experienced. And Thompson, who is one of the more athletic players in the country as well. Ohio State had a combination of...
Tate made a bunch of good plays.
And Tate made some good plays.
They had great plays,
they had a
especially
combination
when they needed it.
Of athleticism, experience, and guys that have been there. These guys have played on good Ohio State basketball teams. They underachieved throughout the year. They had that game at home against Maryland where they won by almost 30 points. It might have been 30 points. And Maryland
is a great basketball
is
team.
A top 12 team in my opinion.
Easily top 12.
I expect them to run West Virginia. I expect them to beat West Virginia, depending how they take the press. That's a big if on a lot of teams. West Virginia can beat teams they're not supposed to if they can't handle their press. And that's the big thing on West Virginia is they push the tempo on defense. And if you can't handle that, if you're not good against the press, you're not going to beat West Virginia. But I think Melo Trimble and Des Wells can handle the ball against the press. And they have the athletes and the horses to run with a West Virginia. So I think Maryland's a Sweet 16 team. And Ohio State in January, beating them by 30. And then they laid some eggs. They lost some games, they just shouldn't lose. And they mess around, and that's how you become a 10 seed when you're better than a 10 seed.
A lot better than a 10
when you're a
seed,
lot better than what that is. And that's just how that happens.
That's the madness of it.
That's
why they call
it
March Madness,
Exactly. And Villanova lost in the second round as a 1 seed. Xavier, who is in the Sweet 16, lost to Villanova 3 times.
It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row, too.
Villanova beat Xavier 3 times in the regular season. Xavier's in the Sweet 16, and Villanova's going home. That's March.
It's the beauty of it.
That's March.
That's why we love it.
That is the absolute beauty of it.
Sports on the Couch will return in just a moment.
And we're back on the couch. Sports on the couch. We're going to make a little transition, and we're going to bring up the excitement. Along with March Madness comes March Baseball.
There's a lot of big acquisitions this year.
Spring trainings, in
Spring
bloom.
training's in full swing. The season's right around the corner. Opening day, I think, for many people like myself. It's like Christmas morning, waking
It's
up.
It's another sports Christmas moment.
I really wish the petition last year would have passed to get it a national holiday.
To get it a national holiday, exactly.
Ozzie Smith, the wizard of all men, started
I
it,
would take my mom's XM satellite radio to school, and I'd keep a headphone in, and I would listen to the first Reds game each year. And even though there's 162 games in the grand scheme of the Major League Baseball season, the first game is irrelevant. But at the same time, it's a celebration of the start of America's pastime.
It's the greatest sport in the world.
For months to come.
I've always said it, because baseball, basketball, if you're losing or if you're winning by a lot, you can dribble the clock out. Football, you can take a knee, but baseball, you have to give the other team an opportunity to beat you.
Exactly.
You can't stall, you can't call timeouts, you can't do anything.
They get their last chance.
You have to throw the ball in the strike zone, and you have to give the hitter an opportunity to do what he does best.
Exactly, and that's when other magic happens too. Along with the hope everybody gets come March, late March, early April, you get false hope as well. You hear a lot of, this is our year, this year's going to be different.
And you never know. You have real hope and you have false hope. Several years ago, in 2008, the Tampa Bay Rays had a phenomenal spring training. People from Fox Sports are going on radio saying these guys are going to make a run in the AL East. This is when the Boston Red Sox still dominated. The New York Yankees still dominated. But the Rays came out on top. And it started from that belief and hope that Joe Madden produced in spring training.
Joe Madden, who
is now the manager of the Chicago Cubs.
Chicago Cubs.
And where
thankfully.
is the biggest buzz in spring training this year? The Chicago Cubs.
Picked
They
up John Lester. Great.
Signed John Lester
great
to a
pickup.
monster contract. They have developed a pitching rotation.
Developed extreme rookie talent.
And Chris
And,
Bryant's.
Jorge Soler,
Mm-hmm.
Javier Baez, Chris Bryant, who's hit
Chris
8
Bryant,
home runs this spring training.
8 home runs.
Hitting 480.
I'm pretty sure no one else has more than 3. It's spring training.
Hit 8
and this
home runs
kid,
and 25 at bats.
25 bats, 8 home runs. It's unreal.
That's unheard of. Nobody's ever done that.
I say you skip the minor league process for the beginning of the year and just put him in the
I think
lineup.
he's ready.
Starlin Castro has been in the
Castro.
league for a couple of years now, and he's developed into an all-star caliber shortstop.
Oh, easily. Easily one of the best shortstops in the National League for sure.
Easily. And the Cubs are on the right track to build a team. Even if it's not the right team, it's giving the fans on the north side of Chicago something to cheer for. This team has been miserable since the Bartman play, since the crumbling of the Moises Alou teams, the Sammy Sosa teams, Mark Pryor and Kerry Wood rotation crumbled. And ever since that foundation didn't work out.
Well, a team that hasn't won a World Series since 1908,
Any little bit.
Any ray of
excitement
sunshine just hypes up any Cubs fan like myself. But I think we kind of saw last year that pitching
really kind of makes the biggest difference.
Is a huge difference. It is absolutely a huge difference. And you saw that in the World Series, where Madison Bumgarner had arguably one of the greatest Major League Baseball postseasons of all time.
We'll go down in history.
It will go down in history.
And every game was a constant pitching duel.
Exactly. Every one. And
the Royals rotation was
of the World Series.
Easily,
it was, the Royals' solid rotation, which they've built for a while. That team they've been building for a while, but they kind of just came out of nowhere really fast.
Royals, all the time I've been alive, the Royals have never been good.
They've never. This is the first year I've ever seen them make the playoffs. Not only did they make the playoffs, they made it in the new format where they had to have a one-game playoff against Oakland.
Oakland, which was a incredible team this year.
Who looked seemingly unbeatable after they picked up...
Especially after they picked up Samardzija.
Samardzija.
Who, R.I.P., is now on the south side.
Is now on the south side of Chicago.
With the White Sox.
Now, where the White Sox have a little more hope. The White Sox were a team that had been miserable since they won their World Series.
The Padres had a good offseason.
The Padres might have been...
Picking up Will Myers and Matt Kemp. That's their outfield.
Justin Upton.
Yeah.
And James Shields pitching. If the World Series was given out in December, if we gave out a World Series trophy in December, it's going to the San Diego Dads, the Padres. And we give them the words like you just hand it over because they've gotten proven major league talent at a reasonable price, and they've had in the past they've had some young talent, and they were pretty bad last year, but adding all of these guys, this veteran leadership,
I'm excited for this baseball season.
It's going to be the Padres.
There's been a lot of moves. The Red Sox made some good moves.
Oh, the Red Sox
picking up Sandoval was a huge acquisition for them.
Sandoval. Who else was that they picked up? We get a list of Boston Red Sox new acquisitions. Sandoval was the big one. I thought he would never leave San Francisco.
I didn't either. I didn't think they'd ever let him go.
I think he just wanted a new background. Sandoval's been there his entire career. Shoot, he's won. Oh, definitely. Thank you. Perfect. They still have the Red Sox have still a good mix of young talent. Mookie Betts from here and local guy from John Overton. Pablo Sandoval at third base. Xavier Bogaerts at shortstop. Pedroia is still there. Pedroia is
arguably one of the best second basemen in the MLB.
And he's been there forever. And he's a Boston guy. Boston loves their guys. They love what they had. Their Paul Pierces. Their David Ortiz.
How could you not love a guy that tries to wear a sweatshirt under his jersey when it's cold outside?
Exactly.
You just gotta love him.
It's character. It gets cold in Boston. Shane Victorino's in the outfield. Mookie Betts in center. Does that say Hanley Ramirez?
Hanley Ramirez. That was the other big guy.
Is a Boston Reds. This is a loaded team. This is got to be Ryan Hannigan as the backup catcher. This is a loaded Boston Red Sox team. Buck Holtz starting pitcher, your ace. It goes down Porcello, Kelly. This is a good rotation mixed. Masterson as well. I didn't even see Masterson as well. This is a good rotation put with an even better hitting lineup and defensive team as well.
The American League East is going to be...
It's going to be
a tough division to win.
A hell of a ride because the Yankees have underachieved. I've never thought I would ever say this in my lifetime. The Yankees being a colossal disaster with millions and millions of dollars of talent. They took Jacoby Ellsbury from Boston. They took Brian McCann from Atlanta. They just take people. They've done this for years. They took Alex Rodriguez.
They're the Yankees,
they're the Yankees.
They're the biggest name in Major League Baseball. Everybody wants to be a Yankee.
Exactly. Everybody wants to play for the Yankees because they have the money. They have the payroll to pay clowns like Alex Rodriguez who now don't produce.
It's gonna be weird not seeing the captain in the pinstripes though.
This is the first year since I'm 95.
Yep.
Or longer than that we will not be seeing Derek Jeter.
Arguably one of the best players to ever play baseball.
One of the best players on and off the field.
Great guy, phenomenal guy.
Absolutely, the face of baseball
for the last 20 years.
You
can hate the Yankees, you can hate everything, but you gotta love Derek Jeter.
The clean baseball. Baseball has been I don't want to say tarnished, but it's been affected in a huge way by steroids, by the Barry Bonds, the Alex Rodriguez, the Roger Clemens.
Yeah, but on the flip side of that, like, taking steroids doesn't make you a better hitter.
Doesn't make you a better hitter. I've said that for years.
Hitting the major league fastball is equally as hard
whether you
hit the ball 600 feet or 200 feet.
Exactly. Making contact is hard enough.
Squaring it up with the sweet spot of the bat on the sweet spot of the ball is still extremely difficult to do.
Exactly. And that's what makes the debate of putting guys like Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Jeff Bagwell, Mark McGwire in the Hall of Fame. It's easy just to say, oh, you cheated. Yeah, you cheated. We can't. Blah, 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 blah. It's almost like the Patriots. Yes, they have been caught cheating, but you still got to be a good team to win where they are. They could have beat the Indianapolis Colts with a bowling ball.
But they still would have beat them.
Yep. And that doesn't take away anything from what the Patriots have done, and it shouldn't take away from what guys like Barry Bonds have done completely. Now, yes, I understand you need to take it with a grain of salt, and the fact that, yes, Barry Bonds did break Hank Aaron's home run record, but he was also caught with human growth hormone. But yet still, it's not easy to hit that fastball and hit it out of the park.
Muscles don't let you get to the ball quicker.
Exactly. Ken Griffey Jr. is the perfect example of that. He's just a lean, thin guy, but had the best swing in baseball.
Most beautiful swing I've ever seen.
Most beautiful swing in baseball, arguably in baseball history. It's like watching poetry in motion. My goodness.
The Dodgers had a little scare the other day. Kershaw wore that line drive off the face. Did you see that?
Oh, no. Oh, that'd be a... I'll say this. We haven't seen...
Spring training game, and the reigning Cy Young wears a...
Oh, my goodness. He wears a ball off the face. A line drive
off the face, and all he did was chip the tooth.
Oh, goodness.
Lucky.
He is incredibly lucky.
Luckily.
He's incredibly lucky. Mm-hmm. Clayton Kershaw is one of those guys, too. Arguably one of the more dominant regular season pitchers. Now, he does have some notoriety in him in dropping the ball in the playoffs.
Yeah. But
he'll get over that. He's still young.
Phenomenal talent.
Multiple Cy Youngs. He was an MVP. That's Justin Verlander, like what Justin Verlander did a couple years ago. But I think Kershaw can maintain. Verlander's fallen off a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I like where Kershaw is. He is the most dominant pitcher in baseball right now.
The Nationals are going to be a hard
team.
And
the Nationals picking up
Scherzer
in the offseason, signing him to big money, and you have Strasburg, Gio Gonzalez.
Hell of a rotation.
That's an insane rotation. Mm-hmm. And if they can get the hitting to go with that, the Nationals theoretically can win the World Series.
Easily.
I just have a hard time wrapping my brain around a Washington Nationals World Series team. Almost as the same way I had a hard time thinking, the Kansas City Royals in the World Series. Mm-hmm. It's easier to think Nationals than Royals. But at the same time, the Nationals are a team that's also famous for not producing in the playoffs with great talent.
Great talent.
And they've had it for years, recently.
As long as they still keep getting production out of Harper, that helps them a lot. He's a great talent.
And, of course, we have these winners. We have our San Diego Padres. We have our Chicago Cubs, Chicago White Sox, Boston Red Sox, teams who got better. Then you have the Atlanta Braves, who seemingly gave up everyone.
Gave and didn't take.
They were
lost Gaddis.
Justin Upton. Jason Hayward.
Mm-hmm.
Gave up Jason Hayward for, even though they got Shelby Miller, they got a pitcher, they needed to beef up the rotation. You give up a guy who's a fan favorite, who's going to bring in tickets.
Atlanta Braves fans love Jason
The most
Hayward.
Adored Braves player was Jason Hayward. He came in to
the most adored
league.
Braves player since John Smoltz.
Since John Smoltz and Chipper Jones.
Everybody loves Chipper.
Everybody loves Chipper Jones.
Everybody loves Jason Hayward.
Exactly. Everyone loved Greg Maddux. Everyone loved Tom Glavine. Those were the Atlanta Braves. And Jason Hayward was a guy who could come in and be the new era, I believed, of the Atlanta Braves. A guy who hit a home run in his first at-bat in the majors.
Not just a home run. A monster.
A monster home run. He crushed it. And now, they kept B.J. Upton, who has been one of the most overrated players in baseball for years, considering he hits under like 250.
Andrelton at the shortstop, still a good
Prospect.
Simmons
is one of the more underrated baseball players.
Oh, easily.
Great prospect. Had a great year last year. I like Chris Johnson at third base. I like Gaddis better at third base.
I still like Kimbrel at the close.
But I like that they kept Kimbrel. Kimbrel is one of the closest things that we have in the Major League now to dominant closers. We don't have, since Rivera's gone, and since, Hoffman's gone. Mm-hmm. Hoffman's been out of the league for a while. Rivera's been out of the league for going on 2 years. Papelbon fell off. The closer doesn't have as much, not I want to say meaning, but we don't have those dominant closers.
And you're seeing starters go complete games a lot.
You're seeing more complete games.
Bumgarner did it, twice in the World Series?
And twice in one series, in the World Series,
The biggest stage in the world,
and it proves you don't have to go to a closer even when your starter's going 8 strong innings and is only giving up even maybe 4, 5, 6 hits.
That's why the setup mid-reliever guy really is kind of...
Exactly.
Kind of non-existent.
It's obsolete.
If the pitcher doesn't get pulled within the first 4 or 5 innings, they're going to go 7 or 8.
Right,
and then straight to a closer on
pitch count. Pitch count, I think, has had more impact now in today's baseball than it ever has. I think pulling guys is more. Before we kept up with pitch count, before we did more analytics on the pitch count, we put more emphasis on the pitch count. Pulling pitchers was a basis of performance.
Of a number, exactly.
Of how many runs are on the board. Mm-hmm. How many, has he struck out anybody? Is he walking people? And something like about the Oakland A's. They are the father of sports analytics. And they've had a mantra of keeping the ball in the strike zone, not walking guys, and getting guys that can draw walks.
Billy Beane set that up.
The father of baseball analytics.
It worked.
And it's worked. It's gotten teams to go into the playoffs as overachievers, Mm-hmm. And of course this year, I think they definitely underachieved. They had the pitching staff. They had
arguably the best pitching staff in the MLB this year and just didn't do anything to show.
But they ran into a buzzsaw that is known as the Kansas City Royals, who ran through the American League, which, like March Madness, was almost unpredictable. I would have never have thought in my short time of existence that the Royals would find a way back to the World Series after being mediocre for...
I wouldn't even give them mediocre.
Mediocre, yeah. They've been terrible.
Terrible.
They've been terrible. They haven't had the talent to win, or they've been the Royals. They've been the laughing stock of baseball. They've had the over 100 loss seasons, and it's
multiple.
One of those teams, like if you ever played MLB The Show on the PlayStation, you're having a bad day, you just got to beat up on a team. You could always beat the Royals.
You could always just wax the Royals.
You could always, pick the Red Sox or the Yankees. And you'd play the Royals, and you'd beat them by 10 runs.
15 runs, yeah.
Because they didn't have a pitcher. They didn't have anybody that would hit home runs on you. They were the Royals.
Needless to say, this baseball season is going to be a good one, I think.
I'm excited.
I am too.
If you had to do a World Series prediction here at this very moment, March 22nd, 2015, who is winning it all against who in October? It's tough, and it's early.
It is. It's tough, and it is very early.
But
I want to say Cubs over the Red Sox.
Just
because I finally want my Cubs to break the streak.
Will break. That would be one of the greatest sports moments
Cubs, Red Sox
of our lifetime. Oh. It's been, 1908? It's been about
107 years.
107 years, right? 107 years since the Cubs have won a World Series. When was the last time they've been to a World Series? That's another thing. Ernie Banks.
Around that time, 70.
Yeah.
Can we get a check on that?
The last time the Cubs.
That guy?
The last time the Cubs were in a World Series. My goodness, that's.
It had to be a long time.
You Google Cubs World Series, and they have World Series championships: 1907, 1908.
I don't know if that's the last time they went.
And that's definitely the last time they won it. But to give you a perspective of the last time the Chicago Cubs have won a World Series, it was 20 plus years before the Great Depression.
1945 against the Detroit Tigers was the last time they went.
1945 was the last World Series.
I was being extremely generous with the 70s.
Yeah. World War II wasn't over in 1945. That was the last time the Cubs have been to a World Series. I really like the Cubs this year. I think they make a run.
I don't know if they take it all though.
But it's
I'm
hard.
I'm going with my heart on this one, not my head. So
it's hard to go.
It's hard to
against the St. Louis Cardinals or the San Francisco Giants. Well, actually, the Giants have this weird thing.
NL Central's a hard division to get out of.
The Central's a deep division.
It is.
And then I would almost based
and
off
now throw
pattern,
in the Nationals in there.
Throw in the Nationals, and based off pattern, I almost wouldn't consider the Giants contenders because they do this weird thing where they win a World Series, they miss the playoffs, win the World Series, miss the playoffs. They've won 3 World Series in the last 5 years.
Year, though.
And in the 2 years they didn't win the World Series, they missed the playoffs. They had losing records.
Yep.
So
they only win in even years.
They only win in even years, and it's 2015.
It's 2015.
So the
consider
Giants,
the Giants out of playoff
I consider
contention.
them done. I don't care who they have on their team, who they don't have on their team.
They can have the reincarnate of
Hank
Aaron,
and they bring roided Barry Bonds back. You get Tim Lincecum in his prime. Willie Mays comes back, and they're not making the playoffs. They go 79-83 because it's an odd year.
It's an odd year.
And that's one of the weirder things in sports. But just on that fact alone, I'm just going based on odd, bizarre pattern here. The Giants can be excluded from the playoffs.
Just the law of averages tells us.
The law of averages will tell us.
That the Giants will not go to the playoffs.
I want to go with the Dodgers in the National League. I've wanted to go with the Dodgers for years. That's a team that's always had the talent, had the depth. They've had the great out. They did lose Kemp. They've had the outfield. They've had the pitching.
And they kind of fell apart after he got hurt late last year.
And once Kemp got hurt was when the Dodgers fell off the face of the earth. And they lost D. Gordon this year. But they did sign Jimmy Rollins and Howie Kendrick. Adrian Gonzalez is still at first base. And Juan Uribe, a champion, at third base.
Puig is still...
And Puig is
still a phenomenal athlete.
I believe most underrated talents in baseball. I don't care what you think of the guy on and off the field.
But he's a quintessential five-tool baseball player.
Your five-tool baseball player that you don't see much. He's got the best arm in baseball. This guy could throw you out from the wall.
Runs a 6'6", 6'7", 60 probably.
And he has got blazing speed. He's built like a bull. This guy is huge.
Swings a 38-inch bat like it's a toothpick.
If Carl Crawford... could play. He's fallen off. He's bounced teams. I'm going back to Yasiel Puig. The guy with this guy's an NL MVP candidate. I would give him a nod to get MVP. Last year's regular season, he hit 296. He's about to touch 300.
He didn't play long either. Got brought up in.
Yeah.
What month did he get brought up? June of last year? July? Maybe?
About 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And he played... Last year was his first, what we consider a full season.
Mm-hmm.
He played about 148 games. 37 doubles, 16 home runs, 69 RBIs. He walked 67 times. 124 strikeouts is a little concerning. But he stole 11 bases. He's got the speed. This guy can play in the major leagues. And I think this is where we're going to see him. He's brought in a lot of attention on himself.
With his attitude.
With his attitude. I mean, with lack of better terms, he is kind of a jackass. But he can play baseball.
He can play baseball.
And I think if he can kind of gear his head, almost like what a DeMarcus Cousins is to the Sacramento Kings, Puig can be to the Dodgers. If he ups his game, meshes with his teammates, and they gel, this team is capable of making a World Series run. They got the pitching.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the infield. They got the outfield. This is a team that's built to make an October run. So I'm going to have to go with Dodgers over Red Sox. I like the Red Sox.
So we're pretty consensus on the Red Sox.
We're pretty consensus on the Red Sox. The Red Sox are stacked, top to bottom. I'm not sold on the Yankees
Not to
yet.
forget they still have the best postseason hitter, and in my opinion, the history of
the
baseball,
most
and
clutch.
David Ortiz.
Yeah, one of those clutch hitters in the history of baseball.
Aside from Reggie Jackson hitting 3 home runs on 4 pitches,
that will we'll probably never see
David
that
Ortiz.
Again. We will never see.
Is almost as clutch as they come.
But David Ortiz is our modern day Mr. October. Yes, you can't give that nickname again. I get it. Reggie Jackson is the original Mr. October. But if we had to make a sequel to that movie, it's David Ortiz. This guy's hit more meaningful. Yeah. Mr. October 2, the David Ortiz story. But this guy has hit home run after home run in big time World Series at bats, ALCS at bats.
Big time.
Him and that team engineered a comeback down 3-0 against the New York Yankees, who the 2004 New York Yankees, one of the more stacked, hitting lineups in the history of baseball. With a great pitching rotation and the fact that they're just the New York Yankees.
That name will always hold.
That name will always hold more than anything.
It's like the Cowboys in the
NFL,
the Lakers,
it's exactly
the Celtics.
The Cowboys, Lakers, Celtics.
They're
a model franchise. And as good as the Yankees' depth chart is, Teixeira's back. For Alex Rodriguez, I want to get your take on this. Alex Rodriguez. You are Joe Girardi. What are you doing with Alex Rodriguez? Are you playing him in the field or are you bringing him off a DH? And do you play him more than 85, 90 games in a year? Does he see the field?
He's getting up there in age,
Is he worth the everyday player tag?
I don't think he can do that.
I don't think
physically. I don't think he can. He can hit. He can definitely still hit. He'll always be able to hit.
And it's inevitable that he passes Willie Mays this year. It's almost inevitable that he'll pass.
But in the American League, when you need a DH, I'm probably DHing him. For
lack
of a better option at the DH.
I'm DHing him. And then you have guys like Garrett Jones and Mark Teixeira who can swap back and forth at first base and then be your DH. Guys who Jones's will be more reliable in terms of average and not striking out. Teixeira, well, he's almost like a younger version.
Another guy they stole from the Braves.
They stole from the Braves,
Teixeira.
Exactly. And
you got Beltran, Ellsbury, and Gardner in the outfield. That's a lot of speed in the outfield.
That is a speedy outfield. That is a stacked outfield.
There's not going to be a ball drop out there unless you hit a scorcher in the gap.
Oh, no. Chase Headley at third base. I wouldn't play Alex Rodriguez at third base all year. If I'm Joe Girardi, I am not sending Alex Rodriguez at third base all year. Headley's a good fielding third baseman, Gold Glove caliber third baseman, who can also hit. I think he hits just as well as Alex Rodriguez. This is 2015. If it's 2005, you start Alex Rodriguez at your third base.
Exactly.
You'll do whatever it takes to get him, in the lineup. And I think what's going to be the X factor for the New York Yankees is how well the pitching rotation comes into play. They have the horses, they have the arms to go deep into October. They have Tanaka, Sabathia, Pineda. That's a lot of money in your first 3 pitchers. And then down the line you have Capuano, who's had a good career in Milwaukee. A guy who's always been, he'll never be a top of the rotation pitcher, but a guy who can support your back end. And how do those guys carry the team? Who is the closer? Who do you have closing these games? Miller? I mean, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to fill the shoes of Rivera.
There's always going to be a shadow of that.
There's always going to be a shadow of him and Derek Jeter.
I mean, they both made the Yankees what they are today, kind of.
Exactly, they are
especially to our generation.
Exactly, they are what makes the Yankees. We don't remember Gehrig and Ruth. We don't remember those. We don't remember that ghost of baseball history. We don't remember. We didn't have. Well, people our age don't remember the Reggie Jacksons. Those teams that won in the 70s. Well, we remember what Derek Jeter, Posada, Bernie Williams, Mariano Rivera, David Cohn, all of these guys that have played for the Yankees, that have made it what it is, and they have won these titles. This is the product of that. A product of that and money, obviously. Because you've got to be stacked on money to have lineups like this. This is not a cheap
Especially
lineup.
with the salary cap system that the MLB employs. If you've got money, you've got players. That's pretty much it.
Exactly. And the Yankees have played off of that
and they've
for
got money.
years. Money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you World Series. And it's bought the New York Yankees 27
It's a lot of
World Series.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot of World Series rings. And they could do it this year, but I don't see it in the pitching staff's consistency. They have the arms, but Sabathia has looked like he's put on some weight. His numbers have declined, you know. He didn't play hardly any last year, did he? I don't believe he did. Tanaka, great pitcher, but can he carry the rotation? Can Pineda stay healthy a whole year? Those are the question marks that keep the Yankees from being a number one contender in the American League.
This season's going to be fun. See how it plays out.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
You never know with Major League Baseball.
I will say this, though. The most underrated team, and I think this is my dark horse to win the American League, the Seattle Mariners. The Seattle Mariners picked up Robinson Cano.
Good pick.
They re-signed Felix Hernandez.
Arguably one of the best pitchers in the bigs.
Him and I believe
Still
him and
is.
Darvish are the two best pitchers in the American League. Darvish, obviously, not
With
playing
a
this
no-hitter.
year. With a no-hitter. He won't be playing this year with Tommy John surgery,
Yeah.
which is the death sentence for the Texas Rangers. But you look all around the board.
Austin Jackson in center field.
Austin Jackson,
Great
who has
young talent in
turned
center
into a great center fielder. You know, you have Ackley and Smith to finish out the outfield. Logan Morrison at first base. Willie Bloomquist backing him up. Another guy who's just, been consistent. And the pitching staff is always going to be held firm by Hernandez. Nelson Cruz. They signed Nelson Cruz in the offseason to be the DH. Another one of those guys that his legacy and his reputation has been a little, tainted by human growth hormone, steroids.
Hits the long ball, though.
But he hits the long ball. And
Hits
that's
it very
something
well.
the Seattle Mariners have not done in years. That's why they helped sign
But now with
Cano.
Cruz and Cano.
Cruz and
Cano
Cano.
hits the long ball very
These
well.
guys can hit the long ball. They can hit the long ball. They're going to get on base. They have speed. I really like this Mariners team to make some noise. They're in a tough AOS. The Angels are always going to be good.
Always.
The A's have kind of another one of those postseason losers.
But they'll have a good regular season.
But they're always going to have a good
They'll
regular
create a
season.
contest to find a winner in the division for sure.
They always find ways based on, their almost foolproof analytics system to have ways to be able to create contending teams. Maybe not the best teams, but 80-win teams that contend for maybe the last spot in the playoffs.
Or the wild card spot.
Or the wild card. And another thing I like about the Mariners, too, is the closer. Fernando Rodney, I think, is one of the few reliable closers we have in Major League Baseball today. Like what the Braves have in Kimbrel, the Mariners have in Fernando Rodney. This guy's done it for years, and he can still do it. Closers can play for 20 years. They pitch maybe an inning, maybe a full inning a game. If that, These guys might only come in for the last 2 outs. Two-thirds of an inning. And they can stand for a long time. These guys can be in the majors for years and years and years. I think that's what
We
you're
saw
going to see in
that with
Chapman.
Rivera.
We saw that with Rivera. Rivera, 20-plus years in the major leagues. All the record and saves.
The best ever do it. So
exactly. Dustin Hoffman, same way. Hoffman was more reliable closers in the history of baseball. And that's the thing. However, Hoffman never won a title. Rivera won titles because he could come in at big time moments in series. In a series, the closer poses a little more importance.
A whole lot more importance.
A whole lot more.
It's kind of the last breath.
It's like the last. You have a team by the throat, and you need to make the knockout punch. The closers
You've
make
got them on the ground. You just got
to
choke them out.
You just got to choke them out. And the closers are the guys that complete that. So I like the Mariners to maybe contend with the Red Sox. I could see a Red Sox-Mariners ALCS, and it be 6-7 games entertaining. But I have a hard time seeing anyone past the Red Sox. I like Red Sox over Dodgers. I don't know if I said Dodgers or Red Sox earlier, but if I did, I'm changing my mind. I like the Red Sox over the Dodgers in the World Series.
World Series 2K15.
World Series 2K15. I'm saying that here at March 22nd. So much can happen from now.
Injuries, trades.
October. Injuries, trades. Oh, my goodness.
Never know.
This shebang doesn't end till late October, early November.
Yep.
So we're taking shots in the dark. But this is what I think my best shot in the dark is in Major League Baseball. We want to change pace a little bit. And the NBA.
MVP race.
Right now. The MVP race.
Arguably one of the most contested MVP races we've had
of all time. It's usually between two players. Last year it was you got LeBron, you got Kevin Durant. The years before that you've had LeBron and LeBron. The year before that it was LeBron and LeBron. And then you'd have the LeBron and Derrick Rose. And there's usually two players with legitimate arguments for MVP. This year, we have 4. And if you want to consider Anthony Davis,
5.
You have 5.
But you have 5 that are neck and neck, really.
You have 5 that are neck and neck. And it depends. It's almost, if you're a sports writer and you have this MVP vote, what are you considering important? What is of your importance?
You can look at the best player on the best team.
The best player on the best team.
Or the player that means the most to their team. Mm-hmm. Or just flat out statistically
or
the best player.
A basic statistical standpoint. Now, from the first angle, best player in the best team, it's Steph Curry.
Steph Curry or James Harden.
Or James Harden.
Because we saw how much better they're playing now without another
Without
all-star,
Dwight Howard.
Without their all-star center in Dwight Howard. And James Harden has just kind of made that his team, which I think is what he wanted when he moved there from OKC.
James Harden has elevated the Houston Rockets. Last year, they were a 5 seed.
In a very stacked Western Conference.
They were a 4 or 5 seed.
In a Western Conference where 3 teams with winning records didn't make the playoffs.
Right. I think they were a 4 seed. But even though it's a stacked Western Conference. And they lost in 6 games to the Portland Trailblazers. This year, this Houston team can be a 2 or 3 seed in the Western Conference. I don't see them catching Golden State. I don't see them catching Memphis, but they can do it. I don't think there's a shot in hell they catch Golden State in the regular season. But Steph Curry is the leading scorer and has had phenomenal games, has made some of the most eye-popping plays in the NBA this year on a team that's 55-13.
And kind of does it in like an unorthodox way that nobody really goes for anymore.
Exactly.
He does it with his skills as a shooter and not really tries to overpower anybody because he can't.
Right. He's a smaller guy.
In a Western Conference where the point guards are just
run the league.
Run the absolute conference. Mm-hmm. No matter what. If you have a good point guard, you're in the Western Conference.
Exactly. And
aside from a couple John Walls, Jeff Teagues.
Right. You have
Kyries.
guys.
But in the West, you have Russell Westbrook.
That's one.
MVP candidate. Steph Curry. MVP candidate. Damian Lillard. Great young point guard. Chris Paul.
Oh, he'll always be in it. He's always
Kyle Lowry.
Considered.
No, Kyle Lowry's in the East.
He's in the East. And just think that's you have those 4. And then you have the back end. Tony Parker will always be considered. Eric Bledsoe from Phoenix.
Tony Parker will always be one of the great point guards.
Just because he's Tony Parker, the guy's won 4 titles. I don't think we can count out the Spurs this year either. We'll get to that. But in terms of the MVP, Steph Curry, if you want to look at it as who's the best player on the best team, it's Steph Curry.
Averaging 23 points a game, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists.
That's great numbers.
Great
that
numbers.
Wins you the MVP.
Especially with a team that also has...
That last year was a 6 seed.
But also has another top 10 player in the NBA right now, Klay Thompson.
Klay Thompson is the second best shooting guard in the NBA behind James Harden. And Steph Curry and Klay Thompson will go down as the best shooting tandem in the history of the NBA.
They're the Splash Brothers.
The Splash Brothers. These guys have a nickname based off how well they shoot the basketball. You know, Klay Thompson, this year, Klay Thompson's averaging close to 22 points a game. 22 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. The rebounds and assists that's not his forte, but the guy shoots, 44% from the 3-point line.
Shoots the lights out.
He had a 37-point quarter. Guys don't score 37 points a game. Teams don't score 37 points in a quarter. But Klay Thompson did it by himself. Hit 9 threes in a quarter.
37 points in one quarter.
There's some teams, if you're not the Houston Rockets, you don't attempt 9 threes in a quarter.
He was three-pointers shy of tying Kobe Bryant's record in one quarter.
In a quarter.
In one quarter. In a fourth of a basketball game.
1/4 of a basketball game.
You can't just overlook that and say it was a
7
fluke.
points. The guy can shoot the basketball. And so can Steph Curry. These two
but
guys.
Their downfall is if they don't shoot well.
That's where they can live. This team at times can live and die by the 3-point line. And that could be their downfall.
They're deep though. Their bench is good.
They have the depth.
They have the depth.
And Steph Curry is the leader of, he's the leader of that team. He's helped make Klay Thompson what he is. He's helped transform Draymond Green into a legitimate, not just a role player, but a guy who produces real minutes, real good minutes. And it's a guy who's elevated his game from like a D-League role player to a guy who is a legitimate,
he's a proficient NBA starter.
Player. Exactly. And a guy who will make himself a lot of money maybe in free agency one day if he chooses to leave San Francisco.
All right, so that's the best player on the best team.
Exactly. And we have the usual MVP suspect, the one who
will always, no matter what, be in the conversation, LeBron James.
LeBron James. For the time, we die, LeBron James is going to he'll be retired and he'll be considered
one
an
of the
MVP
greatest
prospect.
to touch a basketball.
Yeah, one of the greatest to touch a basketball. He is on the Mount Rushmore of the NBA with Michael, Kobe, Wilt. You'll have LeBron up there, Kareem.
Mm-hmm.
Just
having a great year.
And he's having a great year, too.
Averaging 26, 5 rebounds, 7 assists.
That's
on
insane.
A very stacked Cleveland Cavaliers basketball team.
Basketball team.
Almost an unfair stacked Cleveland Cavaliers basketball team.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, from top to bottom.
Very top to
bottom. LeBron has had a LeBron year. He has had the year he usually has, which I believe in most years wins you the MVP. These numbers that he's had this year are the same numbers he's had. Or I won't say same. They're similar. He's had similar numbers. We should never discount LeBron James in an MVP argument, especially when he puts up these type of numbers.
In his last MVP season, 26, 8, and 7.
26, 8, and 7.
Great year.
Great year.
But the elephant in the room.
There is a monster.
Any other year,
elephant.
LeBron James, Steph Curry taking it. But I just honestly think
no one's had a year.
Russell Westbrook is hands down the best player in the NBA this season. 9 triple-doubles.
Right.
The second person, 3.
3. Yeah.
James Harden.
Goodness.
Michael Carter-Williams have 3. Russell Westbrook has 9. Triple that amount.
Russell Westbrook is getting the comparisons to Oscar Robertson, who is the only player in the history of the NBA who I thought would be the only player in the history of the NBA to average a triple-double. Here is what we're looking at with Westbrook. If you round him up, 28 points a game, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. This is a point guard.
The last point guard to win the MVP, Derrick Rose. Averaged 25, 4, and 7. And Russell Westbrook is blowing it out of the water.
Category.
Not to mention the 9 triple-doubles.
Right. He's going to win the scoring title this year, too, as a point guard. But also as a point guard, he averages 9 assists a game. It's not like he's just scoring points and he's not facilitating. And it's not like he's facilitating the guys like Kevin Durant or Serge Ibaka. Ibaka's out. Durant has been out
indefinitely
for a majority of the season.
And they just recently pulled him out of basketball operations.
Exactly.
So
he's
we
not
might
playing
not see him for the
basketball
rest of the year.
activity. Yeah, exactly. there might not be a chance that we see him before the playoffs, even in the playoffs. And I think even without him, Westbrook can carry this team a long way. But here's the knock. Here's what some people like to throw out about Russell Westbrook, and that is that the Thunder are 39-30. In the Eastern Conference, they're a 3-6 seed, depending on how they play in the next 2 weeks, and how Milwaukee plays, and how teams like Chicago and Toronto play. But in the Western Conference, they're fighting for a playoff spot because that is the most loaded conference in sports.
They're 2 games ahead of the Pelicans, who have another MVP candidate. Had he not got hurt,
have he be able to go to the bathroom and take a leak without spraining his ankle, Anthony Davis would be in the conversation.
Almost had a quadruple double the other night.
That's unreal.
Absolutely.
That doesn't happen on NBA 2K.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. And he about did it in real life. I'm just I don't know how you can watch this guy play and not be taken away with his dominance. If the season ends today, I don't care if the Thunder are 39-30. They have had so many roster changes.
Russell Westbrook is the most valuable player.
He's the most valuable player.
Take him off that team, and they are.
This team is not
even making. They're not even making the playoffs in an Eastern Conference.
Yeah, they're 19-50. If you take Russell Westbrook off this team, and this, I'm going to go out on a limb and say Russell Westbrook might be the most athletic basketball player in the history of the NBA.
I can't really argue.
I don't think that's too far-fetched.
I don't think a name really comes to mind
that could top him in athleticism.
No, not at all.
This is a guy, if he works on a more consistent jump shot, his jump shot's gotten better. He's got a great mid-range jump shot.
Loves that elbow jump shot.
That elbow jump shot, right elbow, left elbow, he knocks it down. Off the dribble, off a catch.
If he could develop a three-pointer,
ball game.
Arguably the best point guard to ever play basketball.
Exactly. And
if
he's
he keeps
only
this level
of
play up, and I don't think this is a fluke.
Right.
I don't think this is a breakout year that he's just going to fall off.
Right.
I think this is the consistent play we're going to see to Russell Westbrook, because I believe he's going to. I think he needs to leave OKC. You kind of leave that with Kevin Durant.
And he can make his own thing.
And he can. He's that type of player too.
And he's only 26 years old.
A lot of people would argue he's not even in his prime yet. A lot of people say 28, 29. That's your prime.
28 to 30 is when you're like LeBron is 30 right now.
And didn't win an NBA championship until he was 28 years old.
Yeah. This is where Russell Westbrook
and LeBron has never put up these kind of numbers.
No one's put up these. That's the thing. Nobody in the NBA has put up the numbers right now. And I was watching ESPN, and I saw a sit-down conversation where Brad Daughtry said he believed Russell Westbrook is the best player in the NBA right now. I completely agree, and Chris Broussard laughed at him. What about LeBron James? What about LeBron? I get it.
It's the name.
I get it. It's the name comes with almost everything as well. I get the numbers say LeBron is having an MVP season as well. But Russell Westbrook is having what no one has had since the Big O.
You can't overlook that.
You can't overlook that. And some people might argue that the game was different then. Was it different? It's a lot different in terms of how it's broadcasted and how we watch it. But Oscar Robertson dominated the point guard position for a while.
And I believe Russell Westbrook's doing that this year.
And Russell Westbrook's doing that this year.
And he's the last point guard before Derrick Rose to win it.
Exactly.
Who was it?
Before Derrick Rose?
Steve Nash.
Steve Nash.
With not even half as good
the assist numbers were around 13 assists a game, which is mind-numbing. But 17 points, 13 assists, and I guarantee you he didn't average more than 3 rebounds.
No way.
Westbrook does it all. Westbrook is
Steve Nash's last MVP year, 18, 4, and 10.
18, 4, and 10.
People would laugh if those numbers won an MVP this year.
And you know why they gave it to him? It was the best player on the best team sort of thing. The Phoenix Suns had the best record in the NBA for years. They never won a title.
That's why
you're
Steve
not
Nash
the
had
most
to retire
valuable
without an NBA
without
finals.
without an NBA championship.
Yeah.
He never been to a finals because that team was just built for the regular season, and he was the best player. I don't want to take away from Steve Nash because he had a hell of a career, and he is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Every day of the week.
And arguably the top 3 greatest passers to step on a basketball floor. And one of the best facilitators to ever step on a basketball floor.
But he's not MVP material.
But he wasn't. I don't think you could have given him the MVP.
Not
he was the best player on the best team. But they were,
But he was not the most valuable player in the NBA. I think the most valuable player is a player that any team would do anything to have. Exactly. And I feel like any team would do anything to have Russell Westbrook.
I think if you're building a team around players right now, yes, Chris Broussards of the world, Brian Windhorst of the world, LeBron James exist. I get it. We get it. We've heard the same old song and dance. We get it. Westbrook's 4 years younger and is putting up better numbers in every statistical category.
Number 1 in player efficiency rating.
Number 1 in player efficiency
the most
rating,
important stat in basketball.
Which has come up to be the most important stat in terms of
everything.
Monitoring how valuable a player is. That MVP, most valuable player. I mean, numbers point to Westbrook. Yes.
Numbers never lie.
His numbers never lie. And yes, the team is 39-30. But Westbrook missed a little bit of the time of the year. And this team started off, I want to say they're 4-19 at one point. They started off terrible.
And not to mention that they've been playing without reigning MVP,
Kevin Durant.
And in a very quintessential part of that team, Serge
Ibaka, who has been the backbone of the defensive mantra of that team.
Arguably one of the best defensive big men in the NBA.
And one of the best shot blockers that we have in the NBA, along with the Anthony Davis and what will be Nerlens Noel and DeAndre Jordan, who is just a rebounding machine. Goodness, he's an animal. But if you end the season right now and you look at me and say, hey, we need an MVP, who is your vote? It's Westbrook. I don't see why you wouldn't. I understand. I can kind of understand, yes, they're 39-30, but like I said, no player is more valuable to his team. This team will make the playoffs. I'm sorry. The Pelicans are not going to outlast Russell Westbrook and the Thunder. It's not going to happen. Just not. Anthony Davis, if you can get him on the floor long enough, they can produce. And they can win games. But without him...
I mean, but yeah, they have Tyreek Evans running the one.
Right. Drew Holiday's been out all year.
You know. I just don't think the Pelicans have the final drive to just kind of...
They don't have the horses
to make the push. Because at the end of the season, you have to get hot if you want to make a run in the playoffs. And Russell Westbrook is about as hot as they come.
Exactly. And the Thunder... say, they're an 8 seed in the West. It's March.
Beat the best team in the East 2 nights ago.
And 2 nights ago, they beat the Atlanta Hawks, who are the best team in the East.
Westbrook had 15 points and 4 assists.
Westbrook had
in the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter.
With
his 9th triple-double of the season.
To beat the best team in the East. This team beats great teams.
The Hawks are a tough team to beat.
The Hawks are a legitimate
in my opinion, the best big man duo in the NBA this season.
Absolutely.
And Millsap and Horford.
Millsap and Horford have torn it up.
Millsap and Horford both average double-doubles, and not 10 and 10 double-doubles. 22 and 15, stuff like that.
18 and 11.
Incredible big men. Incredible big men.
The incredible front
Not
court.
to mention the lights-out shooting in Kyle Korver.
Who's
arguably the best three-point shooter to ever play basketball.
Right. He's one of the best. And then you have a resurging point guard in Teague.
Jeff Teague, who is making a surefire name for himself,
exactly.
in my opinion.
He's had a breakout year. And DeMar Carroll's found a place, not as a star, but as a good role player. A guy who comes in and knocks down threes, who can score 20 points in a game.
Exactly.
When the attention's on the Kyle Korvers and the Al Horfords and the Paul Millsaps. And the Thunder beat him. The Thunder, I know we can't take regular season games too seriously, but that says something. If you want to say, the Thunder are only 39-30, you got to look at those games.
Exactly.
You got to look at who they can beat. And I believe the Thunder can creep up to maybe a 7 or a 6 seed. They're going to move up.
They keep
and from
the
where they started,
definitely.
They were at one point after the first month of the season last in the Western Conference. Russell Westbrook gets healthy. catches fire and single-handedly puts them in the playoffs in a loaded Western Conference.
It's hard to climb from a 15 to an 8.
It's hard to climb from 15 to an 8.
Especially in the Western Conference we have today.
Exactly. From the East, they can start off last in the East, and he'd be a 4 seed in the East right now. The only teams that have better records would be the Chicagos, the Cleveland, and Atlanta. You know?
Exactly.
Who's winning it all? We've gone from the best player. Who is winning if they don't cut down nets in the NBA, but who's hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy come June?
I like the Spurs again.
Like, you can never
go wrong with the Spurs. They're the best team-based athletic organization.
And Greg Popovich is the best coach in the history of the NBA.
And not to mention they have 3 players that have played together their whole career.
Exactly. Ginobili, Parker, Duncan, they played together
Ginobili off the bench.
Whole career. And Ginobili...
And he's still an explosive scorer, even at his age.
Oh, off the bench. And this team keeps producing young talent. Kawhi Leonard, Patrick Mills, Corey Joseph's had a good year. Tiago Splitter brings in solid minutes. And Boris Diaw, who is the most underrated passer in the NBA.
Shines in the playoffs.
Every year. Playoffs.
Makes those plays that are so overlooked. Gets 50-50 balls. He steals balls.
This team just does what teams don't want to do.
And they've been there and they've done it. They know how to win it.
And they're going to be well rested because Popovich knows how to balance minutes.
Exactly.
This guy, he gets it. He gets players can't play every minute, every game for 82 games a season. Especially when your best players are wearing down in age. Even with them wearing down in age, they're more efficient than these young guys come playoff time because they've been able to rest. They've been able to rest and they've been able... they have the experience to play in the playoffs, and they're not dead tired by the time the playoffs come. That's when they're at their freshest. That's when they're at their best. Do I have the Spurs winning it this year? No, it's a San Francisco Giants thing. They've never won 2 in a row. They've won in 3 different decades, and they've won 5 titles, but never have they won back-to-back. So that's where I'm going to lean with, at the beginning of the year, I said Oklahoma City beats Chicago in the NBA Finals. I'm going to stick with play a theoretical game here, if Durant is healthy, the Thunder will come out of the West. If he's not, I think the Grizzlies can come out of the West.
Grizzlies.
They are the most overlooked team in the NBA.
If Conley gets back healthy.
And
Conley can produce. He's
had
a breakout season.
He's had a breakout last 2 seasons. I think this team has the offensive firepower to match.
Especially with the acquisition of Jeff Green.
For the first year in a while, the Grizzlies have an offense that can match up with that fierce defensive front court. It's like in college basketball. Why is Kentucky the best team in the country? They have the best defensive front court. They have the best defensive big men. They block shots. They alter shots at the rim. In the NBA, the rim protector, which is a new slang we've thrown around in the NBA to pretty much just describe guys who are great shot blockers. And this team has, the Marc Gasol, Zach Randolph. They bring length off the bench with John Lure and Costa Koufos as well. Guys who can play on-ball defense in the post and guys who can protect the rim as well. So that's why I really like Memphis as my dark horse to come out in the playoffs. But I like Oklahoma City. I think if the Thunder play the Warriors in the first round,
they'll take them to 7, I think.
Take them to 7 or beat them. Especially if Durant's in the lineup. If Durant's in the lineup, they beat him.
I think a sleeper would be the Heat, too. They had a great trade.
Even without Bosch, Dragic gives them...
And Whiteside.
And Whiteside's come out of
nowhere.
He is a double-double machine, and he is...
And will consistently produce double-doubles.
And he's one of the best rim protectors in the NBA right now. He's a shot blocker. This guy will... Rebound machine, shot blocker, good finisher around the rim.
If you win the rebound battle, you have a lot better chance of winning a basketball game.
That is huge. I think if Miami plays Cleveland in the first round,
and if Dwayne Wade is typical flash and does his thing, which he's still capable of, we've seen.
And I think even without Chris Bosh, Not knocking Chris Bosh, but this Heat team has improved as the season's gone on. Mm-hmm. Kyrie Irving is not known as the best defensive point guard. Dragic is known as one of the best offensive point guards off the dribble from mid-range.
It'll be good to see them go back and forth, too.
Finishing
Kyrie can light it up.
And Kyrie can light up, as we saw him drop 57 against the Spurs, something no one has done on a Greg Popovich team.
Highest scoring game this season, right?
It is the highest scoring game this season. You know, he can shoot at will. He's a great three-point shooter. He can shoot off the catch.
His rookie year.
Yeah, he can shoot off the catch, off the dribble. He can facilitate when he wants to. He can create space. I mean,
got arguably the best handles.
That'll be the most fun first-round series, arguably, in the playoffs, would be Miami-Cleveland. I think Cleveland makes it out of the East, and we could see a Cleveland-Oklahoma City. I'm gonna go ahead and say Durant will eventually make it back.
Before they're done. I like an Oklahoma City, Cleveland NBA final. And I just got to go Cleveland. The gut feeling says Cleveland wins it all this year because from top to bottom, they have LeBron, who is still, I think, other than LeBron is the best player in the NBA. You have the shooters on the floor. With Mike Miller coming off the bench, J.R. Smith starting. A great shooter.
Amon Shumpert, who's one of the best defensive two guards in the NBA.
Also has raw athleticism and
with
a great
incredible raw athleticism and a guy who can shoot off the catch. Mm-hmm. And then you have Kevin Love, who's a double-double machine, who is he stretches out the floor.
Exactly.
He'll spread the floor out and he'll knock down threes. And he can also score on the inside.
And LeBron James is best in penetration.
And he's best in penetration. He's best at penetrating and kicking, and that's where he gets his assists. He penetrates, he kicks out. And guys like Irving, like Love, like J.R. Smith will knock down those threes. Mike Miller, Amon Shumpert. And then you have on defense, which was the biggest question, I think we can all agree was the biggest question with Cleveland coming into the year, was how they could play defense. And Timofey Mozgov was the biggest acquisition of that team.
Had 28 rebounds in one game.
Yeah, he's a guy who could put up numbers like that. Yes, I get J.R. Smith's a great shooter, great athlete. Shumpert, one of the best defensive two guards in the NBA. But Mozgov gave them the rim protector, the upgrade from Anderson Varejao. Varejao got hurt, they upgraded. Mm-hmm. And I think they got rid of the weakest link on their team too, which was Dion Waiters. Waiters wouldn't fit in Cleveland because there's too many options. Waiters is a guy who needs to be a top 3 or 4 option on a team.
I think he fits well in OKC.
I think he fits perfectly in OKC. Bring him off the bench.
Hit some clutch shots against Atlanta the other night.
Against Atlanta. Good. Exactly. And Waiters is one of those guys who can come off the bench and give you those points that you miss from starters. You need bench stability. And I think with Waiters, with Singler, with Augustine, that gives them enough bench stability in Oklahoma City to make a legitimate playoff run.
Cantor.
And with Cantor.
Didn't mention him.
Starting. That was a huge acquisition.
Huge.
So I really like Oklahoma City, Cleveland, and I like Cleveland in 6 or 7, maybe 7. But I really enjoy watching Cleveland play in Oklahoma City, and it's the home stretch. This is where it gets good.
Well, maybe we'll get to see a LeBron Spurs matchup.
A LeBron Spurs rematch. Oh, America would kill to see that again. For the 3rd time in a row, and the 4th time since 2007.
It'd be a good series.
Oh, absolutely. It always is. Especially with a new look LeBron and company. Mm-hmm. And take one more quick break here.
Sports on the Couch will return in just a moment.
Back on the couch.
Back to Sports on the Couch, and we have received some heartbreaking news. If you're an Elijah Campbell bracket, we take a nice moment of silence in respect.
It's needed
to the Elijah Campbell bracket
of the bracket.
Yeah. Okay. Tears are gone. The silence has been given, and the respect has been given to my bracket, which has just been murdered here in the last hour as Virginia has been upset by Michigan State. Am I surprised? Kinda. I saw Virginia going a long way because their defense was so good. They are the best on-ball defensive team, but the final score was 60-54. Virginia lost it on offense. They held Michigan State
was hot too.
to 60 points and still lost. That was huge. But again, Tom Izzo, coach of Michigan State.
Great coach.
One of the best coaches in college basketball.
Knows how to win.
One of the top 5 March coaches in college basketball. This guy gets his teams to play well. Even in the Draymond Green, Adrian Payne, Gary Harris, Keith Appling, Kalen Lucas, those days, Ramar Morgan, those teams peaked in March. These guys played their best in March. These guys weren't amazing, spectacular regular season teams. Izzo has this magic with him that he can get guys to play their best when it matters most. When you need to get a win.
And it never matters more than it does in March.
And it never matters more than it does in March. This Michigan State team had their first real test against Duke in November. Duke ran them out of the building. Michigan State has lost some awful Big Ten games. They have not been a Michigan State, your normal Michigan State team. Usually Michigan State will run 2 or 3 seed.
With 7 this year.
They're 7 this year.
That's low.
That's insanely low. Can we get a Google search of Michigan State basketball? I want to get a game log. Get a game log of who they've lost, who they've beaten, who they've lost to, because they haven't had an impressive year. They have some Michigan State-like players. Like Trice is a player. He's a great shooter. Denzel Valentine is a great shooter.
How far back can we go?
Let's see. Oh, that's perfect. They had a shot. They lost to Kansas. They've had their battle tested, but they've lost like Kansas, Notre Dame, lost a heartbreaker at Notre Dame.
Bad loss at Nebraska.
And a bad Nebraska, folks.
Minnesota in OT.
Minnesota in OT, terrible loss. Illinois, terrible loss. Michigan took them to overtime, and this is the worst Michigan game in recent memory. Worst Michigan team in recent memory. And this Nebraska loss is that's an eye popper. Nebraska was a terrible team. We're talking close to last place in the Big Ten. They barely beat Penn State by 6. And here's the thing.
Yet they just knocked off a lot of people's winners.
Starting in March, here is their game log in March. At Wisconsin, who I think will win it all. That's my champion. Lost by 7. Home against Purdue, win by 6. At Indiana, a tournament team, winning by 2 on the road. Now we're going into Big Ten tournament. You beat who I think is the most underrated 10 seed, probably in recent memory, in Ohio State by 9. They beat number 8 Maryland by, 4? 62-58. And the game they lost was in the Big Ten championship against, guess who? Wisconsin, big bad Wisconsin.
In overtime.
In overtime. They took them to overtime. And they had a lead with a minute to go in the game.
Embarrassed Georgia.
And they embarrassed. That's what I expected. I expected them to beat Georgia. But Virginia, my goodness. That's Trice and Valentine and Dawson. Those guys have been there for a while, and they've been on some winning teams. And Izzo is the best at coaching with experience.
And he knows how to put together winning teams.
Like Ohio State, one of those more experienced teams in the Big Ten. They finished in a 10 seed. They didn't play well with their experience. They didn't play well with younger guys. They didn't mesh well with the younger talents of Ohio State. Michigan State, seniors, junior, senior laden team. Guys that played with the Adrian Paynes. Guys who played with the Gary Harrises, the Keith Applings. I don't know if I mentioned Draymond Green. who is now an NBA, just a solid NBA player.
Very solid NBA.
Very solid.
On the best team in the Western Conference.
On the best team in the Western Conference.
And produces and is a main
Is a
factor
solid player.
in why they're the best team in the Western Conference.
And they learn from those guys. Tom Izzo is the best at coaching with experience and helping that experience from one class trickle down to another. You have that group of guys who learned it from Kalen Lucas and Ramar Morgan. Those guys took it to they went to a national title, and then they brought down to the new Michigan State guys who've gone to Sweet 16s, Elite 8s, great March teams. And then you have an underachieving Michigan State team this year, but they're playing their best when it matters, and that's in March. And they're beating the best teams in March. And that's what matters.
That's exactly
they beat
what matters.
The number 2 seed Virginia, who I thought was 1 seed material, better than Villanova. Virginia peaked early. I think I'm going to hit the conclusion that Virginia is a classic case of a team who peaked early.
I just really thought their defense was going to be too much.
I did too, from top to bottom.
Best defensive team in the country.
Absolutely.
Hands down.
Absolutely. They locked down on anyone. But the freight train that was known as the Virginia Cavaliers crashed early. Like they peaked early in or mid-February, early March. By the time ACC tournament rolled around, they didn't look themselves.
Had everybody thinking they were going to be the real deal and go
lost
all the way.
An uncharacteristic game in the ACC tournament to North Carolina. And then come out and they lay an egg in the second round of the NCAA tournament.
Battled a big injury, too.
And they battled. And they played well without Justin Anderson. Anderson was their scoring threat. He was their three-point shooter on a team that the emphasis is not on offense, but it's on their defensive dominance. You don't need that much offense. So I guess that's what they showed when Anderson went down and Brogdon picked up the pace. Mm-hmm. Anthony Gill picked up the pace, you know.
And Brogdon looked good in their first tournament game, too.
And Brogdon looked really good in their first tournament game. I'm a huge Malcolm Brogdon fan. Absolutely. And I don't know. It feels like they peaked early. And this Virginia team will be good with the coach they have for years to come, and they get the players they want. Mm-hmm. They don't get the superstar players. They don't get the McDonald's All-Americans, but they get the players that they want that fit in with their system, that fit in with what they're trying to go along with at Virginia. And that's a tough loss for Tony Bennett and the Cavs, but you know what? Tom Izzo is like I said before, one of the best March coaches, and he is
no stranger to the
madness of March. Exactly. He's won a title. He's gone to multiple Final Fours, and right now he is the conductor of what seems to be a buzzsaw.
And even with what many people thought was like a shell of the former Michigan State that we're used to seeing being a 7 seed, and I mean, clearly showing he still knows what he's doing. They're still knocking off people, and they're going to keep doing that.
That might have been the best thing to happen to Michigan State team is underseeding them to be a 7. I mean, they're number 23 in the country. 7 seed? Doesn't make sense, you know?
They're going to keep winning regardless if they're 7 or 2, you know?
I think Tom Izzo took being seeded 7th to their advantage. Mm-hmm. And he said, look, you know, we have size. We have matchup. We have the athleticism. We have matchup opportunities against these big teams. And that's what makes Tom Izzo the coach he is. And I think it took losing to Illinois in the regular season, losing to Nebraska at Nebraska, losing to Texas Southern on December 20th at home in East Lansing. Texas Southern. Granted, they were a tournament team, but only based on the mere fact they won their conference
title,
and got murdered, absolutely murdered by Kansas. But they lost some bad games, but it doesn't matter now. You don't see that now because they pulled off the biggest win of the year in beating Virginia. So we've had the moment of silence from my bracket. He is respectfully deceased. due to Iowa State and Virginia, who are the two Final Four teams I had on that side of the bracket, going down. Now, my only two Final Four teams are Wisconsin and Kentucky, which seem pretty safe right now. Pretty safe.
They do.
But I thought Virginia was safe. I thought Iowa State was safe. March proves that we know nothing.
It's all luck.
We don't. It's all luck. We're shooting in the dark right now. We don't really know. You cannot.
It's not something you can predict.
You can predict 7-game series. If these teams played 7-game series, we don't play the games. We just hand the trophy to Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
But due to the mere fact that anybody can beat anybody on any given day is why this is the best sporting event in America. And it's the best time of the year. It's unpredictable. Make you want to pull your hair out if you pick a Virginia or an Iowa State to put in your Final Four.
But you also love seeing
you love seeing
the mid-majors.
You love seeing the March miracle magic performances of the Michigan States who underachieve in the regular season and come out in March and tear it up as they've been known to do.
And of the Georgia States.
The Georgia States, the Butlers of old, the Wichita States of old.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've gotten to the point where you mentioned earlier where you lose enough games in your bracket to where you just don't care about it.
Now you're just wanting to watch
That's
good
me
basketball.
Now I want to see Wichita State beat Kansas today. They play at 4:15 Central. I actually think I originally picked Kansas to beat Wichita State in this game. But I'm going to backtrack. And I think Wichita State, as well as they played against a pretty good Indiana team, I'm going to go out on a limb. I will say number 7, which I'll say upsets to Kansas. This team's also wanted this game for years and years and years, and Bill Self wouldn't schedule Wichita State. I think Greg Marshall, who is another one of the best March coaches,
they're going to come out with intensity.
They're coming out with intensity. Sure. That they've wanted this game for years. In the same way I think Wisconsin wants Kentucky,
they can use
Wichita
that to their
State
benefit.
has wanted Kansas.
Right.
Ever since the bracket came out, they said, if we can get past Indiana, we know Kansas will get past Texas Southern or New Mexico State.
And they got it.
They got it.
And now we just got to sit back and watch the magic.
And now we're going to sit back and watch the magic happen. And that's the game. To me, that's the game of the day. I think Duke should beat San Diego State. Should. Capital SHOULD. Should beat San Diego State. Northern Iowa Louisville is going to be a good game. That'll be tough. Those are two really good teams that match up well against each other. West Virginia, Maryland will be entertaining. But Wichita State and Kansas, that's the one that's going to have the most intensity.
For Kansas.
It's the battle for Kansas. It's the Final Four intensity. Kansas wants they're looking at a big picture. But Wichita State, this is almost like their Super Bowl. They don't have to win the title this year. This is the game they've wanted. This is it. So I want to backtrack. I want to do a classic Elijah Campbell backtrack, and I'm going to say Wichita State pulls it off against Kansas today.
It's a good pick.
I feel pretty safe about that.
Kansas is tough to beat.
Kansas is usually tough to beat. But this year's Kansas team, I don't feel...
Not near as...
It's not like the shell of former Kansas.
It's not the Andrew Wiggins, the Joel Embiid, the Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah, all those, Kansas has a history of winning in March, but this team, it doesn't have the feel of a Mario Chalmers, Darrell Arthur, Sharon Collins, Cole Aldrich Kansas basketball team. I don't feel like they have the intensity. They have the experience. They don't have the intensity. Not your normal Bill Self coached basketball team. So
I think I said Eric Bledsoe when he went to Kentucky.
The Kentucky classic mix-up.
Classic mix-up.
What else have we not covered? I think we covered almost everything.
Yeah, we did. And we've only been going for like 3 hours. So
yeah, that's the inaugural podcast of Sports on the Couch. Keep being tuned into Jamming on the Couch, Politics on the Couch, Theories on the Couch.
Pretty much anything you can talk about on the couch.
Anything you can talk about on a piece of furniture, we'll cover on this channel. So keep listening, and we hope you enjoyed, and catch you again.